And then a gentleman from State Leasing got in contact with me, and we started providing terms, so to speak, back and forth. All of those were run past Mayor Robertson, and then when something reasonable was landed on, that's when it was brought to the council. But State Leasing is clear. I made it clear to them that it's being under, it's under consideration by the council. It can be modified. It can, you can reject it. So they understand that nothing is set in stone. That's for sure.
With that, we can entertain questions or suggestions on the motion.
I have a comment. I couldn't think of a better organization to occupy that building, without a doubt. Number one, right on. The only heartburn I had is, I feel we need to be a little more transparent. In a world, we have a nice facility available for lease or rent, or possibly sell. We don't know what was out there. Again, the dollar amount, I'm happy with that, but I just think we should have advertised it. Once we had somebody interested, we never had to give the name of them, but we should have put something out to say, we have a building over there for lease.
I will say that Public Works Supervisor Craycraft was approached by 2 other individuals and showed it to them as well.
The mine and.
Oh, 4, okay. I wasn't aware of them.
Oh.
Okay.
But once again, we're doing it eyeball to eyeball. I still say it should have been in the public, out in the notice. Other than that, that's my only comment. I think it's let's put it to use, could ask for a better group of people to be in it. We know they'll take care of it. And that's just my only comment. If we approve it, that's even great, but the next time we need to advertise it. Thank you.
I agree with Councilman Allworth, and I also, we just kind of got over this with the Georgetown Ranch, and I thought we were kind of under agreement that we would go out for competitive bid on all leases.
Well, and there was some work with Attorney Pyle prior to this on leasing to another state agency, another government entity. This isn't a public.
Right.
This isn't a public letting, and to speak to a little bit to the process, I know this building has been vacant and available for a number of years at this point, and it has been shopped around by, I know Donna Bath, when she was working for Economic Development, did a lot of trying to get someone in that building, a lot of notifying people of that, and the comment that it maybe should have been advertised doesn't fall on deaf ears, but I don't think the fact that the building has been available has been a total secret to whoever, but I do get
But we
it.
literally did take away that lease from Lansdale after we gave it to them, and then put it out to competitive bid.
That's true.
We really did.
Well,
The only issue there is Lance is not a state government.
in regards to that building or whatnot, I think we ought to take a good look at the asset we have in that building and try to think of a purpose, and I have in mind, and I've been working, I've talked to Mike Craycraft about this too. My personal opinion, it would be very beneficial to the residents of the city of Ely to make it a community center, the Ely City Community Center. We have nowhere that a community, if we could approach and bring community concerts back to our community, we have nowhere they can perform. Now that's a facility that can be redesigned or renegotiated in respect for the use to the populace of this city. I can understand it is an expensive detriment at this time because it's not being used. On the other hand, I'm looking at least to the ones that we have online right now. I don't think the kids who want not to play in the park here are going to feel comfortable with highway patrol cars all the way around. And I
That
don't
sounds
think,
good.
huh?
We don't want them feeling comfortable.
My kids don't have a problem playing where there's police officers.
I think he's talking about some ne'er do wells who hang out in the park.
Right, so the ones who might, not have business there might move along.
Well, on the other hand, in every instance that I've seen in highway patrol where they have, well, even in the facility they're at now, there's always a damaged truck or car or what piled up. I don't think that's a good aspect to have in our county park. And I think we ought to look at maybe, a shorter term time or whatever, but give the community a chance to decide what kind of a facility they'd like to have there. That's a city park, and I think a community center would be beneficial to the city of Ely.
I don't know if there's any other comments.
I'd like to just counter what Ernie said, or talking about the community center, first of all, I don't think you get enough people paying what the state's offering to pay. Parking's horrendous. Some of us remember back when it was the Catholic Church bazaar down there, you couldn't find parking. That was a big, big event for 3 days. I think, once again, you know, they have a high school that does the plays and so forth. I think we've got that pretty well covered. Boys and Girls Club, you gotta have money to run that thing, and kids are gonna go probably play in the street before they get charged $10 to go in there and sit and play pool or something. I just don't, I think the building, this is a great idea, in my opinion. That's where the storage of wrecked vehicles, that's evidence. Inside that building, they have a door rolls up. I haven't been in since they remodeled it. Put it in there, put plastic on the floors.
I suppose we could even put up slats in the fence, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's a minor thing. Donna, might not wanna look out the window and see it, but,
I think Donna would prefer that to the other neighbors.
and she didn't have a problem with army truck back there.
If I could comment on that. This is a long-term, this could be a long-term deal, we're not going anywhere. We're only gonna get bigger as we go. As far as the crash vehicles, we do not longer do that anymore. The ones that we have, we're doing a favor for Battle towing at the moment. Strictly, we do not possess those cars anymore. You will never see a wrecked car in that lot. The only cars you will see in that lot will be marked units. That's it. We're here for the long haul, and the state's got money. We are out of a building on April 30th of 2021. And this is probably the best option that we have for a law enforcement facility. It's a military police facility. It suits us fine. Our current situation is unsafe, and we're looking for that type of building where we can have a safe place to congregate and take care of our business.
Do we have any other further questions or discussion on this item?
One thing I would add to this is the first year at the buck in the utility. Many years ago, I used to build some Christmas projects, and they allowed me to build some of the bigger ones inside that armory. And when you turn that heat on, when that building is being used 24/7 basically, you used not to be $1,200 a year for stove oil over there.
Yeah, $1,200 a month.
$1,200 a month?
Yeah.
And that's included the 12, so the first year they're gonna pay all the expenses. All the heat and utilities.
And going forward, they are too. It's just, the first year, they're paying $1 per month, but they're just getting early access.
They won't be occupying the
And
building.
the city will send the state all the bills, all the utility bills.
And
They
then we
will
were, I
reimburse.
thought that was included in the 3,200.
Year 2 it is.
Yes, it is.
So the third term will include whatever cans is, utilities.
That's starting in
Well, that's
2020.
Year one, they're just gonna reimburse us for whatever
That's
expenses.
correct. And if it winds up being 1,600 or 1,800 during the winter to heat that,
Right.
then our rent goes from 3,200 to 1,400. That's a net. It's net is what I'm looking at. And I'm tickled with the idea of having something in there until we come up with a better idea. And like he says, they're not going anywhere, So in the long term, it's probably the best thing. But I would really want to know what that hard cost is going to be going into year 2, because when you start using them, the big doors going up and down, and they allowed me to do that for several nights, almost a month and a half. They were calling us from Carson City, the heating bill, so we were going to talk about heat over there. It was extremely expensive to heat that building.
I can show you the printouts from out
They've
here.
upgraded those
But
systems.
Would it make you more comfortable if we put after year 2 for a reopener to look at utility costs?
I think it should be adjusted in there, yes.
Well, and there is an adjustment that goes up
There's a
every year.
15% increase per year.
Wasn't there at 15%?
That was the agreement.
No. What's in this email that was sent by the state is $3,200 per month commencing May 1st, 2021 and terminating April 30th, 2026.
5 years later.
So,
Well, and once again, terms are, I thought there was a term we had discussed.
I believe there was a 15% increase.
This is what was sent by Patrick. Okay.
15%?
I believe there was a 15% increase.
no, no, that was taken off the table. What's in the packet is what's under consideration tonight.
One of the issues that we ran into when talking to the state is that they generally get full service leases where the tenant takes care, or the owner takes care of everything. So, and because that was my initial thing, like, we were happy to lease it to them, but they need to take care of all of that. So the issue was coming up with an amount that covered that, covered the utilities for us, and then gave us a cushion to start building towards, you know, any repairs or replacements that would be needed down the line.
Well, you'll be adding carpet in a couple of years, and doing all the snow maintenance and removal on it.
Yeah,
I
the
just
snow,
think
the snow maintenance is, Public Works Department. It's just sidewalks and entrances, it's not.
And we do the
It's
sidewalks
being
on
done
there.
anyway, right?
Yes, they do the sidewalks.
Parking area, that's a lot of parking.
We're happy with that part.
And the state will help out with, that would be our responsibility. The state will make enhancements on that building. As far as the carpeting goes, we will pay for it. Somebody will have to install it. Usually contract that out to local contractors. Painting, anything like that, maintenance costs, we do that.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't City Clerk Lee say that she did the research on annual power usage and what that is? And that's been figured in, right?
With that being said, that might have been an 8-hour day or something like that, when these guys might be in there 24 hours a day, or I
We
don't
don't
know.
occupy it. We're in there minimal amount of time.
Okay.
It's on a computerized system out of Carson City when I was in there doing my Christmas stuff. And they turned it on and off and make them pay. When it's on, with the heating up at nighttime, that 1,200 can be eat up pretty fast, I'm gonna tell you.
So how long ago was this?
2015, no, probably the year, 2012 is when I did the big ice sculpture.
Huh.
Yeah.
And the power has gone up since then.
Right,
Diesel,
and have there
it's
been
not
any
snowball, too.
energy upgrades to it, any?
I don't know if there's been any since 2015, but
It's
these
snowball
were,
what I'm concerned with.
these were the numbers as provided by.
Yeah, I'm confident that if she did the research, that that's what it is.
And the council is free to
But the
counter
power,
with some.
the power rate has gone up.
I don't think it's electrical.
It's diesel, it's
Oh, is it?
snowball. Oh, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah,
you're
you're
at
the.
That's a normal.
It's a boiler.
Yeah. Heating oil costs, electrical costs, and utilities, water and sewer, that the office of the military gives to the city.
The only thing I'd like to see, because I would like to see if we see the first year, that snowball, because I know it's a bad deal when I was in there. We wound up working in the cold as much as we could.
What if, just as a suggestion, we,
Revisit the utility.
well, we just say utility costs, if they end up being a larger percentage than what we had anticipated, need to be revisited in the lease, which is something that
All
we
right,
could.
is that a reorder?
Yeah.
And also I wanted to point out too, is most of our leases that we do have now do have a cost of living increase yearly. I don't know if that'd be the desire of this council, but.
So I'll entertain a motion, whether you want to counter, whether you want to open for this, or however you want to do.
So I would move to approve of, as presented, with the stipulation that we are able to revisit the utility fees
Utility, that's what.
after 1 year
After 1 year after they get in there, not this first.
Right.
for the lease.
So it would be the end of year two,
End of year two.
Okay, okay.
because it is a different occupancy, and who knows, I mean, their information is based on how they were occupying the building,
Back in.
and this will be different occupancy and different usage, so having looked at that, I think that's not a bad thing to put. So we have a motion, do I have a second?
So I just have one question.
Yeah.
In this $1 a month for 1 year, Scott, are you guys gonna go in the building?
That's not, I'm not the person to do that, I'll be up our financial people. If they can do that, then they'll work with,
No, I mean, you guys gonna go in, I mean, if we say, yeah, the lease starts.
then if we decide that we wanna pay for the carpeting, we pay for the carpeting.
No, I mean, you guys gonna walk in or say, There's a weight room there, you guys wanna go in there starting June first?
Yeah, if we have it, yes.
Okay. That's not gonna be your office, because you already got it.
There's gonna be some time that they have to do some improvements to the building.
We're gonna have to do that as soon as we can get out of our current situation.
Okay, then you're in.
So sometime within that first year. Okay, so we have a first, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for your comments, Dennis. Okay, let's see, I will hand the gavel over now to, Mayor Pro Tem Beecher for items 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, so item 3, sorry. Councilwoman Beecher, discussion for possible action, discontinuance of May 23rd, 2019, proposed settlement framework for City of Ely et al. Versus SNS Shortline Leasing LLC.
And we are getting John Sandberg on the line right now, and as a reminder, Roy Kay for the training for SNS is in the audience, as is Chris Stanko, the counsel for the foundation, if anyone has questions. And
You have to ask her, she's got it.
I got this one too.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break.
Sorry about that.
All right, so we're getting Attorney Sandberg on the line. Mr. Bassett, would you like to come up and give a little, just some very brief background on this item?
Condense 5 years in 5 minutes?
Yep, let's do that.
Okay. Over 5 years ago, it was in May, just after the city council elections, 3 hours and 11 minutes before the canvass of the vote, the city of Ely filed a lawsuit against SNS. The lawsuit was in the name of the city of Ely and also the White Pine Historical Railroad Foundation. At this particular time, we were not informed of the lawsuit. The foundation found out about the lawsuit when SNS gave me a call and said, "Why are you suing me?" So, the lawsuit has been percolating for 5 years now. It is set to go to trial this October. We have continued the trial more than one time, and the city and the foundation have been opposed to one another, and then we came together in 2019. And in 2019, the city council and the foundation worked together to resolve the lawsuit. Basically, the Sunday before the May 23rd meeting, we received notification that our joint prosecution agreement, the city and the foundation had entered into a joint prosecution agreement to prosecute the lawsuit. We received an email from Mr. Sandberg terminating that lawsuit with any prior notice, and then the next day we received a copy of the letter from McDonald Crano listing a possible settlement with the city of Ely. That particular letter was on the city council agenda for May 23rd, 2019. The foundation, myself and John Gianoli came before the city council and we adamantly opposed that agreement. At that time and at this time, we believe that agreement is illegal. Chris Stanko and his law firm have examined that agreement, and the feeling is, not only Chris's feeling, but the feeling of his law firm, the people he has consulted with, that there are complete chapters of the NRS missing, and that the agreement as presented is not enforceable. The foundation believes that it is not legal, and if the city decides to go down that path, the only option the foundation has is to file a writ of mandamus. And we will. Let me make one thing absolutely perfectly clear. We don't want to. We simply do not want to. But it is our feeling to be true to the foundation and the community that if the city goes and continues this agreement to agree, make no mistake, this is not a settlement agreement. You don't have a settlement agreement yet. You have an agreement to agree. If the city continues down that road, the foundation will have no choice but to file this writ with the court. And we will file the writ immediately after the city votes to continue this settlement. And again, I want to make absolutely positively clear that we do not want to do that action. But the feeling of the foundation board, this has been voted on by the foundation board, and the foundation board voted unanimously to do the writ. Foundation board has also voted unanimously to continue the lawsuit. The foundation has spent a whole ton of money on this lawsuit. We would really and truly like to see the lawsuit go away. But at this particular point in time, feeling of the foundation is that we need to continue it, and the foundation really hopes that the city will join us in wrapping up this lawsuit for the betterment of the city, the foundation, and our community.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bassett?
Well, I'm not particularly fond of Mr. Bassett's statement at this point. The agenda item is for a termination of our legal stuff that we have with the,
You're reading the wrong agenda item. It's number 3.
oh.
The agenda item
I'm
is
very
to
sorry. I
discontinue
apologize.
the settlement agreement.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
You're very welcome.
I have been notified by council of SNS that they have a short statement.
Thank you for hearing me tonight. I represent SNS, and SNS is owned by Mike Williams. He's appeared before the council a couple times in the past. We have some new faces. He wanted me to send along that he wished he could be here tonight. When the agenda item popped on, he arranged a flight to come here. Yesterday, there was some confusion as to whether the parties, the city, SNS, and the foundation were going to meet next Tuesday in Ely. It was our understanding that that was going to happen, and so Mr. Williams changed his flight. Subsequent to him changing the flight, it's also my understanding that the foundation refused to meet on Tuesday, while the city and SNS were willing to do so to discuss this settlement. So that's why he's not here tonight. I do want to make a couple of points here, because this is a settlement agreement between the city and SNS. It's not a settlement agreement between SNS and the foundation. And so when Mr. Bassett comes up here, and I've grown to know Mr. Bassett through this litigation, I appreciate his position, but he really doesn't have any standing under this settlement agreement because he's not a party to it. To go back to sort of where we've gone from May of 2019, when this council approved the material terms of the settlement that SNS has with the city, SNS has been negotiating separately with the foundation on a settlement agreement there. And so that agreement, we've exchanged drafts with the foundation. We haven't reached a final agreement. It's my understanding that the foundation does not want to reach a final settlement agreement at this point in time. But it's not as if SNS hasn't been reaching out to the foundation to try and settle this. It has. Mr. Williams has an open invitation to the city council, an open invitation to the foundation to come up here and meet and discuss settlement anytime you all want. We thought that was going to happen Tuesday, but it didn't. I do want to go back to how this settlement process went out, though, because I don't think that Mr. Bassett's statement is entirely accurate. When this council approved the material terms of the settlement between S&S and the city back in May, it did so by a 3-1 vote, and then in good faith, the parties went through the process of reducing that settlement to a written agreement. As of last week, the final draft of that was exchanged. So I do find it a little bit coincidental that suddenly we have this agenda item popping up after there is a final written agreement that's been exchanged between the city and S&S. In any event, in litigation like this, once you have an agreement, you have to submit it to the court for approval. So there is a motion that the city has filed for what's called the termination of a good faith settlement in front of Judge Dobreski now. And so when Mr. Bassett comes up here and says that it's illegal, that's what Judge Dobreski was going to rule on. And with due respect, I've gotten to know Mr. Giannoli and Mr. Stanko. Mr. Stanko was actually a law clerk at my firm back in 2013, so I've known him for a while. I respect his legal work, but frankly, we disagree on whether this agreement is illegal or not. But no matter the party's position, that's ultimately what Judge Dobreski was going to rule on. And I can also tell you, we heard the threat of a writ of mandamus. Again, this is a settlement agreement between the city and S&S. I strongly question whether the foundation would even have standing to file a writ of mandamus. But again, that's something for Judge Dobreski to decide. And if he thinks it's illegal and the foundation has standing, he will make that ruling, and then we'll have to come back. I also want to sort of talk about a boogeyman that continues to get thrown out here, and I feel like we reach a settlement in May of 2019, and then sort of as the process goes along, this boogeyman gets thrown out there. Nothing in this settlement agreement involves what the parties have referred to as a historical line. That's the portion of the railroad track that the foundation operates its train on. This settlement agreement doesn't involve that. It only involves the northern portion of the line where S&S had contracted to store cars. So, I know there is some concern from the foundation that somehow my client is going to try and take over the historical line and or interfere with the operation of the foundations. I will tell you, there's a promise not to do that in the settlement agreement with the city. In the drafts we've exchanged with the foundation, there's also language in there preventing my client from interfering with the historical line. So that is off the table. It's not something Mike Williams wants. Obviously, the whole point, as I go through and listen to these hearings, economic development is a big thing for this community. So in the future, if there's a way that S&S and the foundation can work to help out the mine on a historical line and run cars through the historical line up to the northern line, my client's willing to negotiate that. But he doesn't want to own the historical line. He doesn't want to interfere with the foundation's operation. And that is protected in both agreements that have been presented to the city and then the agreement that's been presented to the foundation. I will tell you, no pun intended, the train is a long ways down the track on this one. And it is an exceedingly rare move, once a motion for determination of good faith settlement has been filed with the court, for a party to withdraw that motion. I've only seen it once in my career, and that was because a party who was part of the settlement died while the motion was pending. And the estate came in and said, we're not going to do that. Judges don't look favorably upon motions that are submitted for approval and then withdrawn. I'm sure Caroline will tell you that, having clerk. I'm sure, John Sanders will tell you the same thing. Judges are busy people, and so when they see a settlement voted upon and approved, they want to resolve the matter. The other thing is, whenever these sort of things occur, where you have a written settlement agreement or a settlement material terms that's been presented to the court and it's blown up at the midnight hour, that does, cause bad things in the future, including very often separate but parallel litigation. Mark's right. We've been litigating this since July of 2015. The city has spent a lot of money doing that. My client has spent a lot of money doing that. The foundation has spent a lot of money doing that. We put out the fire with respect to the city last year in May, and I think before we throw gasoline on that fire and really blow this thing up, you should consider strongly whether that's something you want to do. My proposal, like I said, Mike Williams has reached the settlement with the city. He's willing and open to negotiating a settlement with the foundation. I would recommend that you kick this out 4 weeks, and then the parties can, again, they can continue settlement talks if the foundation wants to discuss settlement. The other thing it does is allows the filings to be completed in front of Judge Dobreski, and if he has an issue with the legality of this agreement, he can tell us that. But that's ultimately what he's there for. As I listened to Mr. Giannoli's comments, there was a lot of insider-outsider language in there. And I know that economic development is a big thing for this community. Mayor Robertson, I note that you had that as a key principle in your campaign platform. Obviously, the voters agreed with you. I think you almost won nearly 70% of the vote. And so when we look at economic development, this us versus them language has rarely resulted in progress in the United States and in small communities. I come from a state smaller than Nevada. My grandparents operated a hotel for 45 years in a town that was about this size, a little bit bigger, 5,000 people or so. And so I'm keenly aware about economic development and how important it is. And I represent developers in Las Vegas, home builders, and when they do their due diligence in terms of moving into small communities, they start with two things. First, they want to look at the tax treatment they're going to receive from the local taxing body. Is it going to be fair? Is it going to be what they call penciling? Does it make business sense? And then the second thing they're looking for is consistency, predictability, and cooperation from the city council or whatever governing body organizes the city. And so, when you look at those things, they want to know who they're in business with, and they want to be sure that they can trust those people's words. And when we talk about withdrawing a settlement at the midnight hour, that's essentially pulling the wool out from, over my clients. And if people are going to look at that, when people look to invest in this community, they're going to search the public records, and they're going to see that a settlement was reached in May. It was presented to the court, and if this council votes yes on item 3, they're going to see that settlement was withdrawn. And I can tell you that is not the type of community that business people want to do business with, because they just don't have that predictability and they don't have that cooperation. So I would strongly urge you to continue this for 4 weeks. I know you have able counsel from Caroline and John Sandberg. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. These council members know the settlement is confidential for the most part, and so I'm limited in what I can say in an open forum. But to the extent I can answer your questions, I'm happy to do so. If you have some concerns as to why this agenda item was reached, and a council member has a concern, let me know. I'll tell you sort of where we're at and what we're thinking. But
Does anybody have any questions at this point? Well, thank you.
okay, thank you very much.
Caroline, did you have anything to add?
I just wanted to add, I was not here during this May 2019 agreement, so I was not a party to what happened in that meeting. And as Mr. Case said, we do have a final draft, but I do believe that there is still fine tuning that can be done if the council feels that is necessary. I don't think that there's any issues with that. And also, once the settlement, if it were to get into a final draft, it still needs to be voted on by the council to go forward with that settlement or not go forward with that settlement. And I think that's all I had to add to that.
Michelle, if I may, I am not an attorney. I'm on the railroad. Would it be okay if Chris addressed?
In the interest of time, very briefly, yeah. Go ahead and.
Thank you, council, for having me. I'm just going to read you a quick, this is from our opposition. And I just have to disagree with a lot of things Mr. K says, just to hit him real quick in the interest of time. First, we will definitely, you are a public body, and there's all sorts of different rules and regulations that apply to your ability to sell and lease property. And the current agreement actually had to go out for bid, but somehow there's a thought that this new thing doesn't have to go out for bid. And so we've dissected that in depth in the opposition, and we feel like we'll win. Second, also, we own this as tenants in common, okay? You probably own most of your property just in fee simple by yourself. And actually, since this all started, when Kennecott folded up shop, 1979, and started to give assets, never has any one of us ever tried to siphon off our tenancy in common interest of the other. And there's also laws relating to tenancy in common. Third, it keeps saying it's a settlement. It's not a settlement, it's a settlement framework. Here's a quote pulled from the transcript of May 23rd, 2019. I'll just talk loud, that's okay. But in any this is from Mr. K when he was here. But in any civil litigation like this, you have a settlement framework with what's called a big picture point, so that's where the letter is. It's not a binding settlement agreement. You are correct that it would need to be reduced to a settlement agreement in the future. The Foundation's opinion is that this was done at the 11th hour by an outgoing council that wanted to try to bind you. They incorrectly thought, by, in our opinion, incorrect advice from a past city attorney, that they could bind you. And we have cited all sorts of case law that it's not a It's an agreement to agree, it's not binding. If there's any reason for, especially a public body, to get out of an agreement to agree that's not binding anyway, you really don't even need a reason, it's that it's an illegal framework. I'm proud of the work our law firm's done. We have all in all the motion practice in this case that matters. We have won. And we will continue to march this case forward. And as my client said, they never even wanted to be in this case, but it was actually another outgoing city council on the last second and dragged them in. Now we are in it, and we have to continue. And it is deadly serious. Mr. K speaks of the boogeyman, and I can't say too much in detail. Think about it this way. This is just, the S&S believes it's just for car storage. We disagree with that, but it's certainly just a lease. Now, it's been made, the council's been made to feel like, well, you have to sell your whole asset. If you have, think about if you had a debate with one of your renters, and your renter said, well, I'm only going to settle with you if now you sell me the house for a cheap price. And now you're made to feel like that. Well, that's step one. We firmly believe, and we are very concerned, that once the Talons Clause are in on the northern line, that the historical line will be at tremendous risk, not just because of anything in the state law agreement, because of what things can happen at STB. And I can't really reveal in detail why. I've thought about this in depth. I've talked to our clients in depth, and that's why it is so concerning. To talk about economic development, I don't think there's anyone that's been more gung-ho about economic development. Mark Bass has put in $23 million in the railroad complex since he came on in 2002. The guy lives for economic development. We love economic development. We haven't really ever seen any evidence of economic development whatsoever. And in fact, the agreement to agree framework that was posed on May 23rd, 2019 has a provision where they can rip out the track and then have 3 years to put it back. So economic developers typically aren't ripping things out. And again, I want to be real articulate on what he said. We do have standing for a writ. I think anyone has standing for a writ within your community to say you're doing something illegally and make the government body follow statutes, just like people can report an open meeting law violation. And I've been told by my board, the foundation's board, that as a necessity for their survival, to pursue a separate lawsuit outside of this. And also too, Judge Rescue might just say, look, I don't even have authority for a good faith settlement framework on a contract dispute. That's also in the opposition. So he might not even take a shot at whether it's legal or not and say, I don't have authority. And I don't mean it in any negative way whatsoever, particularly the actual individuals on this council, but the foundation board has told me, for their survival, we have already started begun to prepare a full separate lawsuit outside that's a writ. If somehow we lose, we're appealing to the Nevada Supreme Court. The appeals court, then the Supreme Court. And if somehow we lose then we're going to fight it at the STB, where it will have to be approved. So I think that the better road is to join with us. We had thought we were going to join with you, and then we're totally shocked and surprised when something else came, and to work together on this. And that's all I can say for now. Thank you for letting me have time.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Stanko? Okay, seeing that, I would call for a motion.
Mayor, for some future, should we ask Councilman
Oh.
Sandberg if he has something to add?
Mr. Sandberg, do you have anything to add?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm actually driving, and I apologize for not being on a landline. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Just a couple of comments. First of all, the legality or lack of legality of the subject agreement, I think, is going to be ruled upon ultimately by court in the pending motion. And I think that we have to look back to the architect of the agreement is former city attorney Chuck Hodges. And I believe that he formed the basis of the agreement in a way that is legal. He was voted upon in a manner that is legal. And I would also ask Carolyn Townsend to step up and make her comments to see if I'm stating anything incorrectly. But we believe, on behalf of the city, that it is legal. There's nothing illegal about it. And we would urge that the city council stick with its earlier vote and proceed with the settlement with SS. That's pretty much it. I'll be happy to answer whatever questions the city council has. I know that we've spend a lot of time going over it with you. But if you have questions in the public forum, I'd be happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Sandberg? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to discontinue the May 23rd proposed settlement framework for the city of Ely versus S&S Shortline LLC.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all approved? Or, yeah, by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Boy, this thing, I'd like to ask some questions that I can't ask in public. I'd like that 4-week deal.
Are you opposed or in favor of the motion?
I'm not in favor of that agreement, but the litigation of that agreement bothers me a lot.
So would you like to discontinue the agreement then? Are you voting aye?
I'm gonna vote aye.
Motion passes. Item 4, discussion for possible action, termination of legal representation by the law firm of Wolf, Ripken, Shapiro, Schulman, and Rapkin LLP. Do we have any?
May I ask something? I had trouble hearing the vote. What was the vote?
John, the vote was 3-1 in favor of the motion to discontinue the settlement.
Got it. So that motion has been, passed.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, do we have any discussion regarding the termination of the legal representation by our current law firm?
Yeah, this is John. Can I make a few comments? please?
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, the motion has carried to discontinue moving forward with the agreement. And I know that the next item on the agenda is to determine whether or not to have a single law firm proceed with the lawsuit on behalf of both plaintiffs, specifically the city and the foundation. To the extent that whether my firm continues to represent the city or is thanked and excused from its representation, I would simply posit that we provided excellent representation, and when looking at the length of time we've been in the case, the amount and the manner of billings, I think has been completely appropriate. But I would ask the city council to consider whether or not it would be appropriate to have 2 law firms or 1 law firm, considering the possibility of conflict of interest. That's really my own comment.
Okay, does anyone else have any further comment regarding that?
What kind of conflict of interest is he referring to on that?
What kind of conflict of interest are you referring to, John? That's a question from Councilman Spear.
Got it. Okay, well, let's say for the sake of discussion that there are disparate interests in terms of how to resolve pending lawsuits. There was originally 1 law firm engaged to work with the city council at the beginning of the case, and that was simply my firm together with the attorney at the time. To the extent that lawsuit, it was simply a lawsuit for an accounting and whether or not there was a breach of contract by S&S. At that point, there were theoretical and not actual conflicts of interest. Whether or not going forward, given the comments that you've heard this evening, the city council and foundation will be completely aligned in terms of how to resolve the pending lawsuit is a matter that should be considered before deciding whether or not to have separate counsel for the 2 plaintiffs. So, for example, if the matter that is coming up for vote following this agenda item is to reach out to a single law firm, that law firm specifically being Mr. Henderson and Mr. Stanko's law firm, whether either that firm or my firm or any other firm is the sole counsel for both claimants. There would need to be a waiver of conflict of interest. And if the case evolved in a way that resulted in disparate goals, that single firm could no longer represent both parties. So to the extent that there has been demonstrated this evening, I want to be gentle about how I say this. A potential for disparate views of how to go forward with the case. There may be a decision made very shortly to have to hire counsel again. So what may make sense would be to table this particular agenda item pending the fourth vote again, pending the vote on the next issue. And I really don't want to be more specific than that, but typically it would be challenging to have one law firm represent both plaintiffs in a case like this. That's pretty much it. I also want to say that I have confidence in the quality of the representation that the city and the foundation would receive for Mr. Anderson and Mr. Stanko. I think they're fine lawyers, and I think highly of them. And I think that my firm also does a good job. So I really can't think anything other than that. If the sentiment is to continue litigating as co-plaintiffs, and there's going to be one firm involved, you know, and the qualified law firms are both before you. But if there's an opportunity for there to be a disparate view of how to proceed with the case, there's a possible and probably actual conflict that may require two firms in any event. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a motion regarding this item?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'd just like to ask, since we heard from S&S's attorney, what, did we get an opinion from either Caroline on what he's saying about this conflict and so forth, or from Mr. Stanko? Is that appropriate or not?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Mr. Sandberg is currently the city's attorney, and the conflict that he's referring to is potential problems or lawsuits that arise down the line if things end up falling apart. You know, the route can go multiple ways, and that could potentially lead to having, if the city and the foundation had one counsel, and something happened that severed that relationship and needing two counsels again, we're back to almost not the beginning, but we're back to bringing in a new counsel, getting them up to speed on a 5-year lawsuit. And that's just, it is something that is a possibility that conflict would arise in a case like this.
Okay.
So it's a possibility that it could arise. But also, it's a possibility that it may not.
Correct.
And also a possibility that in pooling resources with one law firm, we could really reduce the amount of fees that we're paying out. Would that be correct?
That would be correct in the amount of fees that are paying out for this. Mind you, that there could be other fees in the future that rise out of this potential for the conflict.
Okay, now, the conflict that I see, that I'm trying to understand on this thing, is that if we drop one and go with the railroad's attorney, Mr. Stanko, then there's a falling out. Now, he's represented both of us. Does that disqualify him of picking a side, or do we go two totally different law firms? Because now he's got our stuff and would be fighting against us if we had to litigate that. So the conflict could be possibly with that law firm not being able to handle either side.
I believe so, particularly with the, if we had one law firm, we would re-enter the joint prosecution agreement that the city had previously before the May 23rd vote. And that does have some protections for if they separate in the future, but I don't know the exact particulars on that. But I'm not I can't speak to if it would disqualify them as their counsel, but it would create a conflict between the city and the foundation and how both parties potentially go about their way, yes.
All right, so, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion for the termination of legal representation by law firm Wolf, Rinkin, Shapiro, whatever that is. And I just think it's time to just end it and just try it. This happened in 2019, nothing happened. Nothing happened, we just spent a bunch of money. It's time for a change, so I make that motion to terminate.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed?
Hey,
I'm an aye.
You're an aye. Okay, great. Motion passes.
You see that?
Who's an aye?
we just throw something.
Okay, so item 5, discussion for possible action, direction to city attorney to reach out to counsel for the Northern Nevada Railway Foundation regarding continuance of the joint prosecution agreement and/or possible representation of the city of Ely in the lawsuit City of Ely et al. Versus S&S Short Line Leasing LLC. Do we have a motion?
I'm sorry to interrupt this. This is John. I had trouble hearing the vote. Can I hear what the vote was, please?
It was 3-1, John. It passed to terminate.
3-1.
Uh-huh.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have a motion on item 5?
I got a question on it.
Oh, okay, let's do it.
Would an agreement put together, would they come back to us, excuse me, saying, we're gonna do a 50-50 split on attorney fees like this?
Yeah.
Or would that come back?
I think the item just is for her to reach out
Oh, okay.
and make contact there and come back with some.
Okay, all right, thank you for clarifying that, thank you. That being said, I'll make that motion too.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
Okay, and all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
And all opposed?
Hey,
Motion passes, and I will hand the gavel back to the mayor.
We got 5 minutes to wrap this up, guys.
Thank you,
I'm
John.
almost out of water, so, or whatever.
Have a good evening, John.
Item 6, council member.
Bye-bye.
Item 6, council member, city engineer Almberg, discussion for possible action, approval to assemble a committee to enter into discussions with White County regarding sharing resources on a joint geographic information system, GIS project system. Planned implementation of shared services would be in the 2021 fiscal year, commencing no sooner than July 1st, 2020. If I might speak to this real quick before BJ jumps in. We've been discussing this almost since I came on. This GIS system is really a tool that would allow us to make better use of our limited human resources. Mike is spread thin, our staff is spread thin, Brad is spread thin. Getting all of this so that we can be most effective in keeping track of our systems and how best to spend our money would make such a difference in how the city expends in public works. And we've been working with kind of theoretically how we could do this with the county to get on their system rather than building our own system from scratch. And I'll let BJ kind of take it from there.
Correct, the mayor's correct. We've had some preliminary discussions with some county, Brad and myself have had a few meetings with the county, seeing what our possibilities are. And we just didn't want to go too far down that road if the council wasn't supportive of potentially joining up with a portion of their GIS system so we can start ours from scratch. The county basically was going to put the same thing on their agenda, just make sure that the county was willing to come over and negotiate. I mean, this, by no way, we have no agreement together, we just didn't want to go down that road too far without giving you guys this understanding that this is something that you guys would like to pursue.
What does the county have in place right now that would be advantageous to us? Do you know?
They have the actual system, the
They're-
servers, the
Yes,
program.
they have their GIS, their assessors on it, you know, some of their zoning, things
Oh,
like that. So it's a system where we wouldn't want to come in and reinvent all of our parcels.
Just overlay.
We're just wanting layers and overlaying them.
Yeah.
And so they got a very good start on it. They're in the process of dealing with their think they're calling E911, so their emergency response. And so, I think that's something that we could partner with them in the future so that their emergency system doesn't have a black hole where all the city residents live.
Do you have any questions about this, or kind of what we're thinking logistically wise here?
With this GIS system, say we wanted to look at square footage on a whole block without having to walk it with a rural, is that what this is
Yes,
about?
right now, the county's GIS is set up that way. In fact, we just was working with the road department the other day because they were going out and physically measuring roads and everything else. And I said, well, wait a minute, here's a tool that's the county's tool. Let me show you this. And their eyes popped open like, wow, you did that in a minute and I did it in 30.
Okay, thank you, that's good.
Not only that, but this is a data repository, so we can look when it comes time to replace a water line, where have we had leaks in the last 10 years? Which lines have had the most leaks? Which have we spent the most time repairing? What would be the best source, or what would be the best bang for the city's buck in replacing a road or a curb, or just, I mean, now we have to look at it and we go, well, how long ago was that line put in? Well, I don't remember. Or Dan used to know, but Dan's gone. You know, you have to go back, and this would just make such a difference in how we do that. It would make the city's buck go so much further. So, are there any other questions on that for either myself or BJ? I'll entertain a motion on that.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, BJ. Item 7, Councilman Allworth, discussion for possible action, acceptance of Tri-County Weed Control's TCWC proposal to the city of Ely for herbicide application within the city limits during 2020. SNFMA grant funds require a 20% match from the city of Ely in the amount of $2,000. Jim?
Okay, I called Mr. Ashworth, talked to him about this. The total amount the city has is in July last year when I talked to Jose Noriega of the Forest Service. It's part of a $2 million grant. The city's portion is $378,000. So this amount here is just a portion of that grant. His little map that I asked him, you know, it doesn't show the pink of the Georgetown Ranch. The Georgetown Ranch is included in this quote, I guess, the proposal. And then the $2,000 the city says we have to total cost of the city, we can use an in-kind. Mike would assign the labor cost, the cost of a tractor, weed sprayer, and that could offset that right there. Let's see.
And this will be for like our alleys, all our city
Yeah,
property.
yeah, and again, he's gonna drive around and go through the town. You know, there's some places it's obvious, there's white top all over. On the Georgetown Ranch Road, or the ranch, I inquired about our lease work. And he's getting a lot of his weed control covered through CWMA, and what that stands for. CWMA, something tied in with Eastern Nevada Landscape Coalition. So there is a lot of white top, and he named some other noxious weed out there that's gotta be controlled. It's in the waterway to the Georgetown Ranch. So hopefully, I'm sure Mike could come up with the in-kind cost, but we don't have to pay no cash out. So,
Ed?
Is there any way, you know, this whitetop is a major concern, and it goes downstream. So it starts at Murray Spring, in Murray County, where we have flows, and we have some issues up there, but there's some private property that's between really loaded with whitetop, and I sneak on them over there, never mind, but anyway, we need to, can we force somebody to spray their private property for noxious weed? That's, I guess, the question.
Well, it's something we can complain about.
it's a state law, noxious weeds will not be tolerated. And I think what this gentleman's gonna do, he'll go around, there's a lot on the corner of, I think it's Avenue H and 9th Street, full of it. Now I see some of these state like they're gonna build a house there or something, well, also gonna do new stuff around it. Yeah, it's on our city ordinance also about noxious weeds, so we have abided there, but here's a chance for those people to come to my property and we're gonna do the city property first.
I think this is a great item, and I appreciate Jim's work on it, so I'll entertain a motion on it.
I'll move to,
Go ahead.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Carried and so ordered. Item 8, Council members, treasurer Trask, discussion for possible action, approval of Kennington and Christensen's LLC change order in the amount of $6,600 for additional work hours performed to complete the fiscal year 2019 City of Ely audit. You have treasurer Trask's letter in there on that, and she notified us.
I'll make a motion to accept that extra charge.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried, so ordered. Item 10, Councilman Fungus, discussion for possible action, first reading of ordinance 727, Bill 2020. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over it. I'm just going so quick here. Council member, treasurer Trask, discussion for possible action, designation of Kennington and Christensen LLC to complete the City of Eden's fiscal year 2020 audit pursuant to NRS 354.624. The city must notify the Nevada Department of Taxation of the designation by March 30th of this year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments or conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?